Good afternoon. We are here with none other than Mr. Kenneth Cuvalay, my beloved uncle. And we're going to have a chit chat today on our days growing up here on Statia and leading up to the present situation on the island of St. Eustatius, aka Statia.
Me? Okay. Good day to all. Good day to the world. My name is, like my niece stated already, my name is Kenneth Cuvalay. I was born on this little island which we call, in short, Statia. Original name is St. Eustatius. And I came from a family with 13 children. My mother raised 13 children, which means to say seven of her own and six of one of my sister who died at early age. And the situation which we were brought up in, as the island was at the time, our family was in a situation of extreme poverty. So you had a very, at least my mother, I consider her to be one of the greatest inspirator in my life. Seeing her as a woman who had to hustle, endure the burden of raising 13 kids. Most of the time, my father wasn't around, so she was burdened with the upbringing, and her strive and determination to bring up her children at the time to give them a better tomorrow was intense. She sacrificed a lot. She sacrificed herself. At time in those days, if you see a woman, and in this case, when I speak of woman, I speak about African strong, determined lady as from African descent. I need to emphasize on these things because one of the things as a dilemma, which I consider to be a dilemma among our people, which are failing them daily, is the mere fact that they fail to identify themselves with their origin, which means to say we are all throughout the Americas as we were brought here against our will, and one of the things is tend to see ourselves as unscorn about our own images, and I think that's a big problem. In that case, I had a lot of teaching from inside from my mother about our origin and how we end up in this part of the Americas. And she may not have gone out and spoken beyond my father because in those days you are not allowed to actually leave the house and be externally in the society commenting as if you are in front of the male. So she did her schooling inside of the house, and like I said, I was very conscious of my identity and the origin of my people and myself. So you're speaking here, and I'm addressing you all on Statia and the outer world, and I'm here as African descendant which was born in St. Eustatius. Coming back to the poverty case, I also see a lot of abuse of a woman being on her own, who was basically preyed by men around her. Like, and these are some of the things we tend to feel ashamed of at time to emphasize on. But as a woman on her own who had actually no job, and the dependency will always tend to be there coming, at least let me put it this way, men exploit that vulnerability. As a woman and you don't have a job, you're burdened with your kids, men will come along and well, they, we will help, but there's a price you'll have to pay. So in that case, I saw a lot of abuse, not only unique for my mother, but a lot of our own African sisters with kids on this island at the time when I was growing up. This island was very much isolated in those days, and I'm talking, I was born in the 12th of June 1952. So I'm talking about in the early, late 60s. Could you imagine on the island we never had electricity at that point in time. So today, in 2019, it seems to a lot of people in the younger generation as if it's a common thing that we have electricity. At that time, you had a gentleman who used to light up these gas lamp and put them on certain location on the island, and so you had light here and there. So at the time around 10 in the evening, 10:30 approximately, could you imagine you're on an island which is totally in darkness then, with exception of the oil lamps which some people would have inside of their home burning. And even to that there was an economical consciousness, because to buy kerosene to burn your oil lamp, it was only an exceptional thing when hurricane is around. So you wasn't using that oil lamp too much neither, because you would have had to find money to actually purchase kerosene. Cooking was outside on three rocks, with wood, in a dolphin pot as we called them at the time, and baking was on this in the stone oven. You know, you cut wood. At least my father, that role he took upon himself very good. He used to prepare the flour and everything, and how the stone oven burning, and so it can reach to the appropriate temperature in that case to basically bake the bread inside of the oven. So a lot of things was basically based on one strength and one creativity at the time to basically survive. Talking about medication, medicine, I work, by the way, just to give you all a bit of insight, I am specialized in the addiction treatment and psychiatrical treatment. I was sent here in 2009 by the Dutch Ministry of Health to organize and build up the psychiatrical and addiction services on St. Eustatius and the neighboring island, which you call Saba. So I completed my mission or assignment in July 2017, whereof I basically held my farewell symposium, laying down my legacy as the first African descendants, as a black person from African descent, who went out to study, embraced and built myself, and was having the opportunity to be seconded back down here in 2009 by the Dutch Ministry of Health in the Netherlands to do and build the services as I early mentioned. So that's for me of itself was a sort of a dream which came in fulfillment. The other side of it is I never dreamt that would have happened, but my determination to go away, study and do and build myself and return to the island and contribute in building something fundamentally which would be my legacy when I'm not on this planet anymore is an achievement of itself. And so I want to emphasize on that. I think a lot of our people does not really realize the natural potential they have when it comes to these things.
How was that accepted as we relate to the scripture where they say, no man, no prophet is respected in his own country? You coming back to share your expertise in building a service for the community. How was that accepted?
Let me put it this way. I guess the audience, if you are listening carefully, you heard me mention earlier determination and self responsibility taken, and speaking about our community as people from African descent. Now, to answer that question, how was that accepted? One of the biggest confrontation, as a matter of fact, and dilemma which I was encountering was the disbelief of our own people, people looking like me and you, who couldn't accept the mere fact that the colonial mother country, as I call it, which is the Netherlands, because they are the colonial power, simple as that, they colonize our ancestors and exploit them, expose them to horrendous suffering, etc., etc., which is, in a sense, you still have a level of colonization taking place on this island. But to answer that question, the mere fact that my people saw me as an individual looking like they and they looking like me, couldn't accept the reality that I was in a position or even have the capability to do what I was doing on the island. So the acceptance there was really up against offense coming from your own people, not being accepted as your own people, and basically at times people went that far to say, well, he probably just here learning, and the Dutch who doing it, or while I'm the one physically with the mission, the vision, and building up these services. And it's only until when did my farewell symposium, or let me put it this way, it's only until when problems was persistent, grave, complex psychiatrical problems in the community, whereof I had to interact and take my responsibility in, well, whether it's voluntarily or involuntarily admitting and getting these people into treatment. There's where you will see certain people tend to have the initiative to come and ask for help. But still, at the same time that all of this is happening and asking for help and seeing progress in relation to aid in the community, they still have this huge doubt whether or not you are capable or having the competencies to be doing what you're doing. And at the same time, the reality in practical sense are showing a whole different picture. So the point I'm trying to make is the inferiority complex of our people, which they don't want to hear very much, is a very, very complex and grave dilemma in the mindset of our people. If you are a white foreigner from any part of the world, whether it is from the Netherlands, Italy, the US, you name it, you reach on this island without even asking any question, you have absolute recognition from our people, accepting you as those who know it and those who can do things. So this whole idea of not going forward and developing as a people is related to the disregarding of your own image, which to some degree, I think what white supremacy did over time. If I take the U.S. for instance, our people was brought to the U.S. and the rest of the Americas involuntarily. When they ended slavery in the U.S., all of these immigrants was coming from throughout Europe, and these people was getting thousands of acres of land to have an economical base to start on. Now, our people in the U.S., which by the way was the only ethnical group you can say was really colonized and enslaved or made slaves in the U.S., were never compensated. Although they was free, it's so-called at the time, they has not gotten any one single bit of land to make a start on as an economical base to build on. So what I'm saying here is that in every sense of the word, we are a people who've been abused, murdered over time, raped, and exploited to the extreme. And as the U.S. freed our people at the time, they also decide to make our color become a stigma. So this stigma about our color is relating to the behavior and the mindset of our people as to how they look at themselves, and tend to have this extreme behavior to try and transformate themselves as being white where you cannot be white. So you disregard everything about you. If I said to anybody, if I said to 10 people on this island, you're an African descent, I think 9.5 will say, I'm having nothing to do with Africa. My great grandfather is from Scotland, etc., etc. So we tend to disregard and see our image as a stigma and a scorn. And unless we realize over time that we are the people we are, by the way, coming from a great society, Africa was one of the greatest civilization at the time. In that case, for people to have a better understanding as to the destruction of a black civilization, which is the continent Africa, I always recommend the book called The Destruction of a Black Civilization by the author Chancellor Williams. That's a very interesting book to look in and to read. But nevertheless, that's the destruction of our civilization, where we came from as a great nation with a great supreme civilization. Our people know very little about that. And so this stigma, this scorn this disregard of your image is constantly in the way of a lot of our own people. I'm not saying all of our people, just to be clear on that, but a lot of our people. And if you look at this little island, we are isolated and not being exposed to the outer world for such a long time. It seems that the disregard of your own identity is embedded almost genetically in some of our people behavior, you know. So we are dealing with a very complex island at the same time.